Hello, everyone. You are listening to the C Squared podcast with Corey and Curtis and Holly because, as per usual, we need supervision from at least one adult. And today, our super awesome guest is Mr. Chris Krovatin. Rhymes with Satan, but he's definitely more sinister than the man downstairs himself. And he is back for the second time to impart his wisdom, and we are super thrilled to have him here. But first, before we get started, I do just want to say thank you for coming and putting up with us again.
Thank you for having me, especially at my favorite time of the year, wearing my favorite outfit. So.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you look fabulous. You look amazing. And for people who are listening and not watching this, Chris is in full-on Dracula garb right now. So definitely go to our YouTube and actually watch this one because it is fantastic.
Not at work because you might get so turned on by the sight of a Zoftig Slovenian man dressed as Dracula that you might have to step outside and get a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, ladies, bring them up.
Fellas too, Dracula, that's the beauty of Dracula, man. Brides come in all shapes and colors, baby.
So, dear God, this is going to be off the rails.
So to start, Chris, could you give us another nutshell version recap of who you are, what you do type of thing?
Sure. So I, was best known for driving out the Muslim Turks out of Wallachia in the 1400s. Around that time, I basically had beef with the Sultan, and I became very well known for my acts of war, specifically impalement. What I would do is I would drive long stakes mainly through the crotch and up out of the shoulder. People think out of the mouth, but out of the shoulder of my enemies, so that way they would stay alive and the crows could peck their eyes out. Now, eventually, the very people who had come to trust me came to fear me, and so they killed me. And due to my Christian faith, being sort of betraying me and being at odds with what I was doing, I rose from the grave as a sort of a blood-sucking chiropteran ghoul, and basically just got a ton of revenge, and then kind of holed up in a castle with some wives, a couple of wives, 3 wives to be exact. And for a while there, I was just content to do that and sort of eat the occasional boyer that came my way. But eventually I became, interested in the new world. So I hired this clerk, Jonathan Harker, to come to my castle, and I killed him, or I tried to. But I also got a locket of his, and his wife was fine. So I traveled to England on a ship called the Demeter, and upon getting there, I attempted to basically sort of enact my master plan of amassing like an army of the undead.
Mm-hmm. And how did that transition into you coming to the new world and starting your writing career?
Basically what it was that I found that I needed a source of food that was stupid, willing to be killed by a vampire, and usually loaded with alcohol. And if there was any body of people who best fit those traits, it was heavy metal fans. And so eventually, look, when you can't really go out during the day and you have a lot of time at home, either in a lined box full of dirt or just in like a crypt, you get to writing. And so bit by bit I transitioned from mainly being like the nightmare that haunted men's dreams into being a writer for various heavy metal websites. And basically what I did was I started working for Invisible Oranges, and eventually moved on to Metal Sucks, where I wrote as Emperor Rhombus. And now I'm currently at wearethepit.com, which is Warner Music Group's heavy metal site.
Perfect. So before we move on, just for anybody again who is listening and not watching this, go to YouTube and watch this video because this is perfect.
It will make a lot more sense, let me tell you.
A lot more sense. Sorry, Corey, it's your turn for the question. I just had to say that.
Oh, it is? We don't have names on the questions. But okay, so getting into the meat of things, the meat of this interview, if you will, into the jugular, there is definitely an ebb and a flow to the release schedule and the busy times of year. And what is the busiest times of year for releasing music, and what would be like the sweet spot for a new band to release music so that maybe they're not caught up in the whirlwind of the busiest season?
So that's a really interesting question. And here's when I'll say you probably shouldn't release music if you're a band. The first is anytime after the middle of November, because I've probably already written my end of year list at that point. And so if your album like blows me away, I'll jump back in. But like end of year lists are usually getting published by mid-December. And so if you're releasing an album, it's like movies. If you put out a movie at Christmas, either it's going to do huge because everyone's at home, but more likely than not, it's going to bomb. And that's very much the case with albums, especially with heavy metal, where like heavy metal people, for as much as we bitch about labels, we also love compartmentalization. And so we love subgenres, we love, scenes. And when it comes to like mid-December, you're kind of like, fuck this year already. You know what I mean? And so, what I would say is that you shouldn't do the very end of the year. The beginning of the year can be dicey, in that like you can sort of get lost in the shuffle. So like the first couple of months of the year, it's tough unless you're having like a breakthrough album. I think Behemoth released The Satanist that year in like February, and everyone was just like, oh, that's on our radars from now on. The sweet spot, the good season to release metal, I would say, is in mid to late spring or early summer, in part because you've opened up the summer as a touring period of time. Summer is great for touring. Everyone's out. Everyone's down to go and drink a lot of beer and stuff like that. The Halloween season is great if you're spooky, but something that was very interesting. Alice Cooper, once I interviewed him, and I asked him about Halloween, and he mentioned, he was like, "Look, Halloween's not a great night to play a show because everyone's at home with their kids." Everyone like at least for Alice Cooper, for his fans who are all in their 40s, like everyone's at home with their kids, or they're going to parties, or they're dressed up, and like going to a concert can be a bit of a hassle on Halloween night. He said the month leading up to Halloween, September and October, those are amazing for us because everyone's like ramping up and getting in the Halloween spirit. Similarly, if you're a spooky band, Cradle of Filth this past Friday just released an album, and that was like perfect timing for them because it's Cradle of Filth. It's satanic vampire metal. Like everyone's gonna want that a little before Halloween. But if you're like I don't know, a mathcore band or something, as much as metal is often associated with this season, this isn't really the season for you. You know what I mean? I often find the spring and the summer gives you most of the year to pick up steam and to do some touring, but it also doesn't get you caught too much in the whirlwind of big bands. You know what I mean? I guess the last thing I would say is that, at the same time, the summer is fine, but August is actually really good because August you're within sight of the end of year lists. So there's a primacy of recency kind of thing where you're like, oh yeah, I remember that album. That album was really good. But also just you're in the summer, so you still have a lot of the year left to tour and promote and kind of get people out there. You know what I mean? So I know that's a very long answer, but I've thought about this quite a bit.
So just to quickly follow up before Holly asks her question, though, what would you say would be the absolute worst time of year for people to release? And would it be December, or are you thinking?
Probably, I would say the very end of the year. I mean, yeah. Or specifically, I would say, here's what I'll say, is just think of holidays, think of times that are important to your markets as craters. If you release your album on the Friday after Thanksgiving, I just might not see it, man, because I'm at home dealing with my family, desperately trying to deal with my hangover or like get my uncle out of here, or something like that. So I would say the absolute worst time would be the very end of the year, anytime after mid-December, certainly. But anytime too near anything that important, you know what I mean? And that's historically something you see, these days for a band like Slayer, God Hates Us All came out on 9/11. And because they were Slayer, that had some sort of poetry to it. But you got to think about all the other bands who released their albums on 9/11. And it just got caught up in the shuffle, especially as you're saying, if you're a new band, if you're a new band, if you've got something to prove and an impression to make, and you release your album right next to like even something like the 4th of July or Christmas or any day where people are distracted by like their normal lives, you really run the risk of just being one of many albums that came out during a time when I couldn't be bothered to listen to your album. And I know that sounds unfair, and I know that sounds like kind of, it's like, but as music journalists, you should give every band, we sure should. But if you're playing this smart, that's really what I would advise for young bands and for new bands.
Yeah, from what my experience is, it can go either way, because sometimes like like you said, because a lot of the guys are on holidays and stuff like that. Other times you can also fluke out because no one's submitting. So there's a balance there, right? But it depends.
And keep an eye on your peers, man. If Cannibal Corpse are releasing an album at the same weekend as your brutal death metal debut, you might not get noticed, man.
Yeah.
You might be a death metal band who's not Cannibal Corpse releasing an album this weekend. So you know, look at the schedule, find a weekend that like works best for you. I forget, you should look up, there's a great interview with, I want to say it was Trivium. The bands were guessing when the new Tool album was going to come out back in like 2014.
Oh yeah.
And I think it was one of the dudes from Trivium, it might have been Paolo, who like nailed it. And he nailed it because he looked at the other albums and the other bands who would probably be on their release cycle at that point. And it was like genius to watch because it was a dude who has done this before being like, let's be real, here's how it's going to work. So
yeah, interesting. Now it's Holly's turn.
So I mean, it'd be interesting to know how many like promo pictures you're getting at this time of year, if you have like a sort of average.
That's interesting. I'm getting a lot, in part because I'm really locked into like the death metal and black metal underground, and just for any band who has like a picture of a vampire or a zombie or the devil on the cover of their album, like Halloween in October is going to be a big time of year. But you know, I would say the most promos I get and the most stuff I get is usually in the spring into early summer, because I think everyone sees that as a time when people are, you know, they want to get out, they want to do stuff, they want to be part of the scene, you know, they want to listen to music, you know what I mean? They want to drive around in their cars with music blasting and stuff like that. And so that's usually when I get the most promos. And I mean, I also, you know, I've been doing this a while, so I get like probably 75 promo emails a day at least. But right now I'm getting quite a bit. I'm getting quite a bit from like black and death metal bands with really gnarly album covers who want to do, you know, Halloween promo and stuff like that. But it would probably be the late spring, early summer where I get like the bulk of like, I get bulk also of like the mainstream stuff. You know what I mean? Very rarely does Rammstein release an album in like, you know, the last weekend of November or something like that.
So just out of curiosity, just on that, Chris, or not out of curiosity, just to point out, so the main type of promo that's going to stick out with you from bands is going to be the black and death metal, you're not into like the metalcore, the rest.
You know, I try to listen to everything, man. I have a promos spreadsheet where I just go through, like, I'll just sit down some days when I have the time and listen to like 50 promos in a row and write notes on them. And if you're really good, you know, making music that's not black or death metal, I'll listen to it, you know, or I'll make a note. And then when it comes time for a release date, and I'm like, what am I going to write up for our weekly column? And I see my notes on your album, I'll be like, oh shit, yeah, man, that album's actually amazing. There's a band, I want to say they're called Black Map, who play like Chevelle style hard rock. They play like county fair hard rock, but it's really good, compelling county fair hard rock. And that was an example of promo. I got it, I played it, I was like, this is awesome. And now I remember that band for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? So I'm a fan of everything, but you guys last time I was on asked me something that I didn't have a good answer for, and I've thought about it a bit more. And that's things that attract me or don't attract me to opening an email. Basically, what has to be in a subject line for me to want to open or not want to open an email. And something that came to mind for me was, well, there were two things that came to mind for me. And one was too many qualifiers. If we've got virtuosic guitarist, former Motley Crue singer, and YouTube sensation, Vinny Bobini, I'm just like, what is this? What is this? And then it's for like, does a song playthrough of the song he didn't write. And I'm just kind of just like, woof, you know? And the second thing is trying to fudge like concepts that we know. So if you say they're a YouTube star, and it's because their videos of them doing guitar playthroughs have like, each one has like 90 to 120,000 views. You and I both know that's not a YouTube star. We know what this is, you know, or if you're like black metal sensation so-and-so, and they have a long catalog and they've played Vakken, but I don't really know who this is, and they're not really black metal. Like, like if you try to kind of like play on a term or play on a fad or a subgenre or something that like deep down as a metalhead I know isn't real, not only will I be like, pass, but I'll also have a number of moments later where if I see stuff for the same artist, even if they've gotten better, even if the new album is great, I'll kind of be like, the YouTube star? Is that what we're talking about? So those are two things that just I found myself after I was on your show skipping over emails or being like, I really don't want to look at this email, and being like, now why? Why is that? And those were the things that came to mind. So
just to clarify on that a little bit here. So now what should they be using if they're not really a YouTube star, but they're a YouTuber type thing, in your opinion, to get you to look at the email?
Now that's a difficult thing. Somebody earlier this week, actually, I had a business meeting where I was like, this isn't going to work for the pit. And they were like, it's very easy to say what's not going to work. So tell me what will work. And I had that moment of being like, oh shit, I don't have an answer to that. I just came in being like, this sucks. What will get me to open something, I will say, is, I mentioned this the last time, but driving home a real sense of like what this really is. If you have a guitar virtuoso and his guitar playthroughs have a solid number of YouTube hits, they have 100,000 or more YouTube views. Include, maybe even include that in the thing. Be like guitar virtuoso. If you describe him with one thing, guitar virtuoso Vinny Bobini, as opposed to like guitar virtuoso Gibson guitarist of the decade, YouTube star, that kind of thing. If you have guitar virtuoso Vinny Bobini hits 100,000 YouTube views on every one of his videos, I'm kind of like, okay, man, that's a headline. That's something where I'm like, I want to know what this is about. So, and it's tough because again, if like, there's a difficulty in seeming too vague or not promoting people enough, especially with musicians who consider themselves virtuosic, who are like also include the YouTube thing in the subject line, who want, like, who think of themselves as all these things and so want to make sure they're being sold as all these things. But more and more with our headlines, with our subject lines for newsletters and stuff, we find that vagueness or straightforwardness is great, is the thing that attracts people, gives them a moment of being like, I want to know what this is about.
That is hilarious because that's two opposite things. So that's kind of funny.
What do you mean?
Well, because you said it was either vagueness or straightforwardness.
Yeah. No, it's tough because sometimes with your vagueness, if you do something being like, this black and death metal band will rip your face off, I'm kind of like immediately like, okay, email, let's dance, let's see what you're giving me. On the other hand, being like, black metalers Raven Cult are back with their third album. I'm also kind of like, okay, if I'm interested in Raven Cult or if I'm interested in black metal, I'm kind of like, let's see what this is. You know what I mean? I think there's too much of an emphasis on like, sell it. And often, like, especially as a journalist who gets this many emails a day, I just want to know what's up, Yeah. And if I'll dig it. Also, I'll tell you this, if you send me an email and it's like for fans of, and you include my 3 favorite bands in there, like I'll open it instantly. You know what I mean? Especially for metalheads where, there's some small band from Arkansas, but you would die for them. If you're like, sounds like them, I'm like, oh, okay, I need to know what this is. You know what I mean?
That's funny. Just for our listeners, if anybody's paying attention, Kevin from Decibel said the exact same thing that Chris just did about the thing. So just keep that in mind if you're ever trying to pitch someone, because that's the second time we've heard this in the last couple of weeks.
I'm a metalhead, man, being a metalhead, so much of it is too about like these bands on these same, in my mind, these same levels who are not on these same levels. Wake from Arkansas, in my mind, is as good a band as, I don't know, Seven Dust. Yeah. But Wake from Arkansas will play a dank basement and Seven Dust will play an arena. And maybe that's for the best because I don't want to see Wake in an arena. I want to be worried I'm going to get a fungal infection during a Wake show. But I just, I think that's something where if you come to me and you're like, sounds like Wake fans will like this. I'm like, that's a band where like, no one else knows what I'm talking about when I mention them. If you mention them, you must know something cool. You must know what's up. So, yeah.
Cool. Holly?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up real quick because it kind of sounds a bit like you're looking for like an authenticity with the bands. That's kind of the word that comes to mind. Like, rather than, like, say, putting like YouTuber or whatever, all of these like key phrases before them, you're kind of looking for what they actually are. Not necessarily as like to put them down or anything, but just, yeah, rather than like overselling it kind of thing.
I think authenticity is a good way to put it. I think that I'm trying to think. I think authenticity is a really solid word for it. I guess it's just that, how do I put this? I guess like my feeling often with a lot of these bands is that like in the modern age, a lot of people can be a lot of things. It's easy to say I'm a YouTube star if I've put out enough content and gathered enough views that like, and like, you know, I have enough good comments and followers. I feel like it's often very easy to be a lot of things, especially on the internet. And so when there's a band that does a thing, you know what I mean? Where it's their own thing and it's cool and it's interesting. And when you're selling them, you're saying, this band does this and they do it better than everyone else. Like they're awesome. I really appreciate that. You know what I mean? Somebody said that to me actually about Rob Zombie. They were like, man, everything in this world seems done by committee except for Rob Zombie. Because Rob Zombie, everything in this world is, you know, you got to give it this, these people need to give it reads to make sure it passes this test. And does it sell this thing to this market? And Rob Zombie every time is going to be like murder, clip from Nosferatu, naked woman, probably my wife, naked my wife. And so, you know, there's something to that just is very attractive and very attractive to, again, I'm a very old school metalhead. I'm a metal chud. I'm in my 30s. I'm sure if you talk to a 20-year-old metal journalist right now, they'd have a very different view of things. But for me, an authenticity, and again, an authenticity in your message, in your politics. If you really work, if you raise a lot of money for charity as a band, you exist in a really cool place in my mind. You know what I mean? But an authenticity and just an entrenchment or a love of what you do. A new band who comes to mind in that respect, who talk about a band who released smartly their album around Halloween, is a band named Ice Nine Kills. Do we know Ice Nine Kills? They're like a metalcore band with a very emo vocal sound that makes music about horror movies. Like that's their thing. And their new album, just like, I love it. And I do not love emo vocals, and I do not really love a lot of modern metalcore, but like the Psycho song is about Psycho. The Evil Dead song is about Evil Dead. Like he really goes into it in a way where I'm like, I really appreciate how dedicated this is to its thing. You know what I mean? And like, you know, again, like they played it smart this year. Every magazine cover is them in a Halloween costume. Like they gamed the thing perfectly. But they're a band who like I probably wouldn't like if like I think some of their earlier material they just write about like girls and life, and I'm like, nah, man. But when they went all in their thing, I really believed in it, which is tough. You know, it's really tough when everyone like every time a band goes all in on their thing and they get big, somebody tells them now go all in kind of on everything. I think a band who comes to mind for me like that is Mastodon. I think Mastodon were a band who went really hard in the weird, and then at some point we're kind of like, we're going to open it up a little bit. And look, they probably have more people listening to their music now than they would have if they'd been like, this next one's going to be another psychic warfare journey. But I think that's something that like, not that I dislike Mastodon or anything, but it's certainly something that for me, they became a little bit of everything. And I very much like a specific thing as a journalist, especially as a metal journalist, you know what I mean? Which is tough. Specific thing is a tough sell. You know what I mean? Like, especially when you're working for a website, when traffic is your bread and butter, you want everyone. You want everyone on the site, you know? So it's tough.
Cool. So we're wrapping up pretty quickly here because we are running out of time, unfortunately, because we didn't have much time today, which kind of sucks. But so Chris, final question I think we're going to ask you here is, actually, I'm going to have Corey ask it about. We want to ask him a Dracula question as a wrap up, Corey.
Who do you think portrayed Dracula the best in film, and why?
how are you going to ask me all these fucking music industry questions when you got the perfect question at the end of all of this? When all I want to talk, all I want to talk about is this. Oh my God, where to begin? Okay. So this is something I've thought about a lot all the time, especially in this outfit. I think about it. And first of all, I think the obvious answer is me. But more importantly, okay, so here's the thing about Christopher Lee. I love Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee's Dracula is awesome because Christopher Lee, I'm not sure if you know this, was on an elite Nazi hunting team in World War II. And you can tell there's a lot of Nazi to his Dracula. There's this rigid back and this command, and there's what he gets down really well is the Dracula misogyny and the Dracula megalomania. In the book, Dracula is like, your women are mine, and your world is mine. And now that you've turned your world with all your electric lights and your reason and your lack of superstition into a place where I can just kill everyone I want, I'm going to take over. So Christopher Lee's amazing in that respect, and I really respect and love Christopher Lee. Gary Oldman is just like a beautiful actor in that role. The accent is awesome. He's the only person in that movie whose accent doesn't make you want to bury your face in your hands. Keanu Reeves saying Carfax Abbey in a British accent is the most depressing fucking thing I've ever heard. I mean, Winona Ryder's bad with her Lucy, oh my sweet Lucy. But Anthony Hopkins is just whatever. Carrie Elway.
Van Helsing. I thought he was hilarious as Van Helsing.
Yes. No, she's a whore of the devil.
The bitch is the darkness.
The bitch is darkness. But first, we must see. So, fun fact, by the way, I know I'm wasting all of our time here. If you read the book Dracula, there are all these moments where, it's all epistolary, so it's all from various characters' point of views, and diaries and letters and whatnot. And there's all these parts where people are like, we joined hands and pledged to rid the world of evil once and for all. After dinner, we blah, blah, and I'm like, whoa, you pause for fucking dinner? There's a vampire out there killing people, and you were like, oh, but Cookie made chip beef, let's have dinner, and then we'll talk about the vampire. And in the movie, there's a scene where Van Helsing is like, John, we will kill the evil, but first, I am starved. Feed me. And then you see him and Jonathan Harker eating roast in a pub. And so they do a good job of being like, you're like, there's evil out there. And this old Dutch doctor is like, yeah, but it's fucking dinner time. So you gotta do this, man. Anyway, look, Gary Oldman is incredible in that movie. I wish he was taller. I wish he was more broad-shouldered. That scene with him shirtless and she's feeding from him, the baptism of blood. You're kind of just like, oh man, you're a little bit of a bird-bodied kind of guy, aren't you, man? Here's why I'm gonna say Bela Lugosi. At the end of the day, Dracula is kind of a creepy, crawly bad guy. Frankenstein can knock down walls, and the Wolfman can rip you apart. Dracula is like a walking shadow in a giant tomb. And in that respect, he's kind of awkward and ridiculous. You know what I mean? And they do a great thing in the Bela Lugosi movie where, it's seen as this sort of slow spider-like approach, but maybe it's just Dracula hasn't talked in 50 years, 75 years. And so he's kind of awkward, and he's kind of this chubby, awkward parasite. And the whole movie, Bela Lugosi, he starts off awkward, and then bit by bit he gets more and more confident because he starts consuming blood again and becoming powerful again. And so I have to say Lugosi, because of the sheer level of weirdness of his Dracula. There's very little that's sexy about his Dracula in a way that Christopher Lee is sexy. Christopher Lee shows up and he's tall and he's got this chin. Gary Oldman's got these weird steampunk glasses and this perfect accent. He's controlling wolves. But Bela Lugosi is this thing where you're like, he's dressed really well and his castle's really big and he made me this wonderful dinner. So why is he so fucking weird? Why am I terrified of him? That's the fear of Dracula, is that you invite him in and then he gets up close and you're like, oh no, he's like a pasty, horrible thing. But by that time, you can't push him away. You know what I mean? He's here, you invited him in. I'm going to do a honorable mention here. I love a movie called Shadow of the Vampire. Shadow of the Vampire is a fictional retelling of the making of Nosferatu with John Malkovich as F.W. Murnau, Udo Kier as Albin Grau, the cultist producer of Nosferatu, and Willem Dafoe as Max Schreck, who played Nosferatu. And the whole conceit of the movie is what if, in fact, Nosferatu was made with an actual vampire playing the role of Graf Orlok. And it's a beautifully made, beautiful looking movie about filmmaking, but also about vampires. Willem Dafoe is terrifying as Nosferatu. So if you get a chance, watch that movie too, because it's just got a depiction of vampires and it's kind of a meta commentary on vampires that I really love. So that's my Dracula answer. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Excellent.
Well, thank you again, Chris, for coming on. And with that, party on, Corey.
Party on, everybody.
Party on, guys.